There are moments in criminal history that stop people dead in their tracks, moments when truth is stranger and more unsettling than fiction. There are cases that chill law enforcement veterans, not because the crimes were brutal, but because of what came after: the way a suspect spoke, the way they reacted, and the way their words peeled back the curtain on something deeply unsettling. There are interrogation videos that stay with you, haunting you long after you turn them off. But there is one interrogation, one suspect, one confession that transcended everything else and became known as the most disturbing interrogation footage ever released. This is the story of Luca Rocco Magnotta. This is the story of the interrogation that made the world shudder. This is the story of evil speaking in the calmest voice imaginable. On the 25th of May 2012, people in Montreal, Canada believed they were watching a typical spring day unfold. But investigators were about to uncover something that would shock the world, horrify the public, and redefine what many thought they knew about violence, social media, and the modern age of crime. The victim was a young adult film actor named Jun Lin, a 23-year-old man from China who was living in Montreal. He was known by friends as quiet, respectful, and hardworking. He was in Canada on a student visa. He did not have enemies, and there was no indication that his life would end in unspeakable violence. But on that day, something unimaginable occurred. Jun Lin's body was discovered in a condominium, dismembered, partially frozen, and with evidence of deliberate mutilation. The sight was so gruesome that even seasoned investigators recoiled. This was not just murder. This was ritualistic violence. This was dismemberment. This was cruelty beyond the usual. It was a scene that would dominate headlines around the world. And when investigators began tracking evidence, the trail led to a suspect named Luca Magnotta. From the moment authorities began gathering evidence, the case was unlike anything seen before. Not because of the violence alone, but because of how public the crime had been. A video of part of the incident had been uploaded to a pornographic website, where it was viewed hundreds of times before being removed. Emails sent from the suspect gloated about the crime. Pieces of the victim's body were mailed to political offices, schools, and National Party headquarters. The brutality was grotesque. The public reaction was horror. But investigators knew that the worst was not just the crime itself. It was what came next. Because as police began to close in, they discovered that Magnotta had fled first to Toronto, then to Vancouver, and then to Europe. He became international news. Interpol issued a red notice. Magnotta was captured in Berlin, Germany, on the 4th of June 2012, after hotel staff recognized him from news reports. He was arrested without incident, and then the interrogation began. When investigators brought Luca Magnotta into the interview room, they expected denial. They expected false stories. They expected confusion. They did not expect what followed. This was not a normal suspect interview. This was not a confused person caught by surprise. What law enforcement encountered was a man who looked them in the eye, spoke clearly, and at times appeared almost at ease as he addressed the most horrific acts of violence imaginable. This was a suspect who did not plead ignorance. He did not deflect blame. He did not break down in tears. He did not seem afraid. Instead, in the interrogation footage, Magnotta spoke in a voice that was calm, articulate, and eerily composed. He spoke about the crime he was accused of committing in vivid detail without hesitation. And that is what made this interrogation so disturbing. Not the acts themselves, not even the fact that they were real, but the way the suspect articulated them as though he were describing a news article, not a human being. From the very first moments of the interview, detectives were taken aback. Magnotta sat upright. He clasped his hands in front of him. He made eye contact. He answered questions directly. There was none of the nervous shifting, none of the stammered words, none of the panic that typically accompanies a suspect facing serious charges. Instead, what emerged was something else entirely, a voice that described violence with unsettling clarity. As detectives asked him about the murder of Jun Lin, Magnotta responded without evasion. He spoke of the sequence of events with precision. He recounted moments of the crime that only the perpetrator could know. He explained aspects of the dismemberment. He described details of the disposal of remains. Each answer was delivered in a tone that captivated and horrified detectives alike, because it was so devoid of remorse. He spoke of violence as though it were architecture, something to be described. They noted the lack of emotional stress. They noted the steadiness of his voice. They noted that at no point did he show signs of shame, fear, or empathy. This level of detachment is rare. Most suspects, when confronted with undeniable evidence of gruesome violence, will at least show signs of internal conflict. Not Magnotta. He looked like a man describing a movie he had seen, not a life he had taken, not a human being he had dismembered, just events in a sequence. This is the part of the footage that audiences found most disturbing, the contrast between the horror of the crime and the composure of the suspect describing it. As the interrogation progressed, detectives asked questions that would make most people recoil. They asked about motive. They asked about intent. They asked about his thoughts before, during, and after the crime. And in each response, Magnotta showed something investigators found difficult to process: emotional detachment. He spoke as though the act was separate from him, almost as though he were summarizing something that happened to someone else. This is what made the interrogation so chilling. This is what made the footage so hard for people to watch. This is what made seasoned law enforcement officers uncomfortable as they sat in the viewing room, listening, taking notes, and silently processing what was being said. Nothing in that room matched what they had experienced before. Nothing. And to this day, investigative professionals cite this as one of the most psychologically disturbing interviews they have encountered. But perhaps the most unsettling moment came toward the end of the interview, when detectives asked Magnotta a question that was more personal, a question about empathy. Did he feel sorry for what he had done? Did he feel remorse? Did he understand the pain inflicted on the victim and the victim's family? Most suspects at that point start to break down. Most suspects show some indication of guilt, regret, or emotional reaction. Magnotta responded with a tone that was calm and unwavering. He said he understood the gravity of the situation. He did not intend to deny responsibility. He acknowledged what happened, but he said nothing about regret, nothing about empathy, nothing about sorrow. In his voice, there was comprehension but not conscience. That distinction is what made this interrogation unforgettable. It was not that he admitted to the crime, it was how he spoke about it. It was the stillness in his voice, the absence of emotion, the clarity with which he recounted something so horrific. Legal analysts, psychologists, and criminal profilers later studied the footage frame by frame. They pointed out nuances in his speech. They noted subtle shifts in body language. They examined the absence of physiological stress responses: no trembling, no avoidance of eye contact, no hesitation. Instead, they saw a suspect who was oddly composed, almost eerily calm. This level of detachment is not common. Most violent offenders exhibit some combination of guilt, fear, or defensiveness when confronted by investigators. Not Magnotta. He spoke with a precision and calm that was as chilling as the crime itself. The footage eventually became public after legal proceedings had concluded. When it was released, viewers around the world reacted with shock. People described the interrogation as disturbing, unsettling, like watching a story being told without feeling. News outlets analyzed it. Psychologists dissected it. Criminal justice professionals wrote about it. And millions of people watched a man speak about violence in a way that was haunting for reasons that had nothing to do with blood or gore, but everything to do with emotional detachment. That is what made this footage the most disturbing ever released. Not the visuals of violence, not the description of crime, but the voice of a human being explaining it as though describing a historical event. Eventually, Magnotta was tried in court. He was convicted on multiple counts, including first-degree murder, distributing obscene material, and mutilation of a body. He was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole. Justice, in the legal sense, was served, but the interrogation footage remains one of the most haunting pieces of criminal evidence in modern history. It represents a glimpse into a mind that speaks of violence with clarity, but without conscience. It reminds investigators and viewers alike that evil does not always manifest in chaos or fear. Sometimes it manifests in calmness, articulation, and unsettling composure. And that is what makes this interrogation footage truly disturbing. If you are still thinking about this interrogation, If the way Magnata spoke chills you, or if you want to explore what modern psychology says about this level of emotional detachment in violent offenders, let me know, because the truth behind this interview cuts deeper than the crime itself.